This video is brought to you by BetUS Sportsbook and Casino.
I was at your boy Rico from RicoScores, and we're here to break down the biggest standouts from that Commanders versus Jets joint practice from yesterday. And I also have 5 stock ups and 5 stock downs of certain players, certain position groups, certain specific things about the team whose stocks have either risen or fallen. And this also doubles up as kind of like the things to watch for in the preseason game against the Jets to see if those stock ups are actually living up to the hype. Was that a real thing, or some of these stock downs, should we not panic over them? But just to let you know, this video is sponsored by BetUS Sportsbook and Casino. You can see them at the top left and all of that too. But before we dive into this video, make sure you stiff arm that like button, stiff arm the subscription button, and stiff arm the bell next to that subscription button so you get notification each and every time I release an informative and opinionated video just like this one. Make sure you stay tuned, and of course I will be live streaming all 4 quarters of that Jets Commanders preseason game tomorrow at 12 p.m. I'm gonna start live streaming at 11 a.m. to make sure that we have like a full hour to kind of like, all right, man, let's get right. You know, football is back. Let's celebrate. Let's talk about certain things. We can definitely talk about a lot of the things that I'm going to talk about in this video. So give us a clean little hour before the preseason game starts, and I'll be breaking down everything going on live, play by play, all of that type of stuff as we're watching that together. So make sure you pull up for that tomorrow. And without further ado, let's go ahead and dive into this video, man. Let's get it. Adam. And y'all know me, whenever I've done stock ups and stock downs, I typically try to get the bad out the way. So let's start with the stocks that went down. You already know how this concept goes, but just in case if you don't, I'm not necessarily saying stock down a player or a specific position group is bad. It's just my opinion of them have lowered significantly enough to where I'm like, okay, maybe we should wait before we start to really believe that this specific thing, this specific player is as good or as ready as we thought. And stock up, same thing. You know, it's not necessarily guaranteeing that a certain player or position group is going to be great. It's just, okay, this is better or further ahead than I thought it would be. These are literally just stocks changing. It's not to say that one thing is necessarily better than the other. It's just, did something get worse? Am I a little bit more pessimistic or optimistic about a specific thing? Let's get into it again. We're starting with the stock downs. And first of all, Emmanuel Forbes is a good one to start with. Even though I do feel like a lot of the hate that he's receiving right now is definitely overblown, but I mean, it was pretty bad at certain times. But I also want to point out the fact that, like, yo, where was the safety help? Again, I don't feel like it's as bad as a lot of people are making it out to be. First of all, Garrett Wilson is going to be one of the best receivers in the NFL, point blank, period. And even the guy throwing on the ball, I know it wasn't Aaron Rodgers, but you saw how Tyrod Taylor has been doing us, especially last year. So it wasn't like they just threw a bum quarterback out there. But then also my third point, on a lot of those clips, especially like the big deep ball one, like, where was the safety help? He was step for step with them underneath. It was just a well-placed ball. Of course, Garrett Wilson does Garrett Wilson things, and it's just like, if the safety help was over top, maybe the quarterback doesn't even attempt that throw, or the safety is there to force the incompletion. So there was just, if you really look at some of those clips, now some of them, granted, he got straight up beat. Some of those clips, some of those moments, flat out got beat. And that's why he's in this stock down, because we were hearing throughout training camp so far up to this point that he's actually been doing a pretty decent job against Terry McLaurin, going toe-to-toe with him, getting pass breakups and things like that, but while also giving up pretty big plays deep down the field at times. But he's been going toe-to-toe with Terry. He's been going toe-to-toe with Jahan. So I was definitely expecting him to look better than what I saw against the Jets. But nevertheless, I don't feel like it was that bad, but he still counts as a stock down. I'm not going to lie. He definitely does. But I also want to point out the fact that, of course, as Jets fans, because those were the only people that were there to record what was going on, I'm pretty sure they recorded the entire practice, but they only uploaded the clips of Garrett Wilson winning the reps. Emmanuel Forbes, I heard, not only got an interception, that day. I believe he was the only interception that happened the whole practice, and nobody has a clip of that. Or at the very least, all Jets fans deleted it, never uploaded it or whatever. On top of the fact that he was the only, I believe, DB to get an interception from either team that entire practice. So he deserves some credit for that. And then to end the practice, I'm hearing that he had a couple of good reps against Garrett Wilson and literally, like, I wouldn't say locked him down, because if you get beat 8 times, but then you lock a guy down for 2, I wouldn't call that lockdown. I feel like I need another word in for that. But he won the reps. Garrett Wilson, I would still say, won more reps than Emmanuel Forbes did in their head-to-head. But like, to end practice, he actually won a couple of those reps. Again, he still counts as a stock down because he didn't look even as good as I expected. He looked a little bit worse than I expected. But my main point is, this is definitely being blown out of proportion. And of course, as Jets fans, they're going to upload the footage of Garrett Wilson doing them dirty, but then when Emmanuel Forbes wins the reps and actually makes sure that the ball is broken up, or again he got an interception, no Jets fan is going to upload that clip of their team getting abused like that or losing a rep. So, you know, I feel like it's kind of like a narrative that's going on, especially amongst Jets fans, and the way that it's being promoted. It just looks like Emmanuel Forbes only got cooked, and that's it. Yeah, he did get cooked again. I want to emphasize that's why he's in the stock down part of this, but he also had some good moments that none of us have seen with our own eyes. Guys like JP Finley and Mitch Tisler, who were able to go to the practice, maybe saw some of it, but for the most part, all of us are just kind of like, man, I mean, from what we're seeing, it looks like Emmanuel Forbes is the worst corner in the NFL, the way that it's being portrayed by the fact that the only clips that were uploaded were of Garrett Wilson winning his reps. Any of the reps that Emmanuel Forbes won, nowhere to be found on the internet at all. Nowhere. So, again, stock down, but definitely nowhere near as bad as we thought. And I also want to point out the fact too, though, and another reason why this is in the stock down, because I don't think y'all, like, people have really sat down and looked at the receivers we got to go against this year, bro. And so Emmanuel Forbes is going to have to match up against all of these guys at some point, even if he isn't the starter, or even if he isn't the guy that's mainly attached to all of these wide receivers I'm about to list out to you. But it's going to get ugly. He's going to be on these guys at some point in these games this year. So you have Mike Evans once, week 1. You have Malik Neighbors twice, of course, because of the Giants. You have Jamar Chase. You have Marvin Harrison Jr. You have Amari Cooper. You have DJ Moore, along with Rome Odunze and Keenan Allen. You have Brandon Ayuk potentially if he ends up in Pittsburgh, even though that's not looking very likely. You have AJ Brown twice because of the Eagles, Devonta Smith twice because of the Eagles, CeeDee Lamb twice because of the Cowboys, and Chris Olave. And that's not even all of them, but those are just some of the most notable names that he's gonna have to match up against at some point this season. So that is why I'm worried right there, because that's a gauntlet of wide receivers. Those are most of the best ones in the league, I'm not gonna lie. Now moving on to the offensive line, definitely stock down. They were so bad that we couldn't even evaluate Jaden Daniels, the running backs, or really any other part of the offense, because a lot of the plays like were sacks basically, even though they allowed Jaden Daniels to continue because it is practice. So it's like, yeah, you technically got sacked. In a real game it would have been a sack, but we're just gonna tap you and let you continue. But the offensive, especially run game wise, we couldn't even evaluate the running backs at all. I believe there was one drive where we literally didn't gain a single yard. We ran the ball each play and didn't get a single yard. But we do need to point out the fact there's an asterisk here, just like the Emmanuel Forbes situation, where, yeah, it was bad, but it's not as bad as people think. Same thing with the offensive line, because we had backups out there. Like, the only starters we had out there were our starting center and Tyler Biadasz and our starting left guard, Nick Allegretti. That was it. Everybody else was a backup. We got to the point where Chris Paul was a starting right tackle at some point in practice. Mason Brooks, I believe, was a starting left tackle at some point in practice. Trent Scott, when he was out there, was getting beat bad. 1v1 drills, team drills, guys just completely getting right past them, immediately getting to Jaden Daniels. Jaden Daniels has, I mean, no shot, no chance of anything. Like, I mean, the O-line was terrible. The only asterisk is the fact that, yeah, it was a lot of backups out there. I'm pretty sure the starters, I didn't get to see it myself, but I'm pretty sure the starters that actually are supposed to be out there, the 2 out of 5 that will be starting for the Commanders, maybe they did their job and everybody else was just trash. I don't know, but it does bring to the point that injuries happen, man. Now, granted, hopefully we're never in a situation where both Brandon Coleman, Andrew Wiley, and he might as well go ahead and throw Samuel Cosme, I believe, a future All-Pro in there. Hopefully there's no situation where all three of those guys are hurt at the same time in the regular season. Hopefully this is like a precautionary situation where they're just kind of holding those guys out. But if we needed them to play right now, they could go out there and play fairly well, even if they're not 100%. Who knows? But at the same time, injuries happen. And there may be a situation, I just highly doubt. I wouldn't put any lick of money on the fact, on the chances that our offensive line will stay 100% healthy every single game of the season, all 17 games in a regular season. I just don't see that happening. So at some point, one of those linebackers that was one of those offensive linemen that was getting beat like a drum by the Jets is going to have to go out there. But another asterisk to point out is that we're not going to face a defensive line as dominant as the Jets every week, but at the same time, you will. I mean, look at this division with Micah Parsons and Brian Burns and Kayvon Thibodeau. We've seen how he does us. That man doesn't do anything against anybody else until he plays us. I don't know what it is against the Giants. They become 99 overalls across the board, even including Daniel Jones, or even last year, all of their backups. We lost to both of the backup quarterbacks that they have. For some reason, when we play the Giants the past few years, basically since Ron Rivera has been here, they just have our number and they play to a higher level. Kayvon Thibodeau is no different at all. I mean, that man literally can't do anything against any other tackle until the Commanders come to town. I don't know what it is. But either way, my point is, not every game you're going to be going against a defensive line as great as the Jets, but at the same time, there are a lot of games you're going to have to go against a defensive line as great as the Jets, maybe even arguably better. So we better get it together. My only room for optimism was the fact that the starters weren't out there. But again, one of the main reasons that this is still a stock down is because I just highly doubt that our offensive line will be able to stay healthy for an entire season anyway. So one of those guys that was getting beat is potentially going to have to go out there at some point this season anyway. Trent Scott, Cornelius Lucas, both of those guys getting beat. I'm very fearful for Jaden Daniels in those situations. Now, moving on, speaking of the offensive line, the reason we were in this situation where Jaden Daniels was under duress was because of injuries. Now, granted, the only real injuries we have on the team right now are the offensive line, but that's really important. I mean, we're lucky I don't believe that I heard, at least, that any reporting that any additional injuries happened against the Jets in that joint practice. But we came in already hurt on the offensive line, and it seems to be the case going into this preseason. We'll see who plays or not. Brandon Coleman, Samuel Cosme dealing with the illness he had, Andrew Wiley with the tightness or whatever. Who exactly knows what's going on there? But my point is, at least we're healthy outside of the offensive line. But the offensive line is very important. When you just drafted a quarterback second overall, he looks like he has the makings of a franchise quarterback that can take you all the way someday. He may not necessarily be there yet, but he looks like he has some of the traits, some of the clues to show you, hey, this is a guy we can truly rally behind and believe in. But if he has no protection, how is he going to do any of the amazing things that we want him to do? The reason that we drafted him, if the offensive line has to allow him to do that, they have to protect him. And as of right now, with how hurt our offensive line is right now, granted, we have almost like an entire month until we're about to play a regular season game. So hopefully by then they're healthy. But as of today, if we had to play a game tomorrow, Jaden Daniels is cooked, man. So it's not good. Injuries, got to give it a stock down. Even though the rest of the team is for the most part pretty healthy, the offensive line is a big thorn in our shoe right now with as far as injuries go, man. I mean, because Jaden Daniels can't do his job. You saw, again, the running backs could not do their job. They couldn't get anything going. There was nothing to evaluate from Austin Eckler, Brian Robinson, and the other running backs. They had no chance. They had no chance to show anything that they could do. Wide receivers, I mean, if Jaden Daniels is under duress, then, I mean, the receivers don't have time to get open. The plays did before they even have a chance to get open. It was just so hard to evaluate so many things because of the injuries to the offensive line. Then also moving on, another stock down. Now, I'm not saying Jaden Daniels in general, because I still believe he can go out there and even play well enough to win this week 1 game against Tampa Bay in Tampa Bay. I still am very high on Jaden Daniels overall, but we do need to lower the sky high expectations that was starting to grow. Not everybody in the fan base was like this, but it was starting to get to a point that people were like, wait a minute, Jaden Daniels looks unstoppable in practice right now. And if he can continue on that trajectory, we could probably make the playoffs this year or something like that. And Jaden Daniels, again, do not sell your stock on him. I don't feel like my expectations for him are necessarily any lower. I'm still very high on Jaden Daniels. I just feel like they were starting to reach a point where his expectations were starting to get like, okay, this man can take the league by storm. Maybe rookie season, offensive rookie of the year, top 10 quarterback in the NFL type of stuff. We may want to slow down on that. Now, like, the expectation that he can go out there and show us why we took him second overall, have some bright flashes, win us some games, and lead us to a way better record than last year, that stock is a full go still. I still firmly believe in that stock. I would still buy more of that stock. But the whole Jaden Daniels can turn us into Super Bowl contenders sooner than you think type of thing, we need to slow down on that specifically. That's why this is a weird stock down. That's why I really want to emphasize that I'm saying that I'm not wording these as bad. I'm just saying these are lower. They're stocks down that have lowered in value since before going into that Jets joint practice. And so that's another one that is not bad. Jaden Daniels, still very high on him. But, you know, if you were up here, you may want to come down here. Whereas Drake May's down here in comparison, if you see what I'm saying. And then lastly, probably the biggest worry of all, because the offensive line, that situation is kind of like, they get healthy, I believe we'll be straight. I love what I'm seeing from Brandon Coleman, especially since, like, we're going to talk about this in the stock ups, but Brandon Coleman has done a great job against Frankie Louvu. Frankie Louvu was putting a whooping on the Jets offensive line at times. So Brandon Coleman has shown me, at least through, like, by way of Frankie Louvu, that he can handle being a left tackle. So I'm optimistic that this offensive line, when healthy, the problem is, when will they be healthy? If they're healthy, how long can they stay healthy and things like that. But the offensive line, when healthy, we're good to go. But kicker, my last stock down, both of the kickers, every kicker we have on roster right now, trash. We need new kickers. I refuse to believe that any of the two kickers that we have on roster right now, and Ramiz Ahmed and Riley Patterson, are good to go. Like, we're just good. Either of those guys will end up making it or attempting a kick for us in the regular season. I refuse to believe that. I refuse to believe that Adam Peters will even conduct any sort of malpractice like that. I know we have to be scouring every team's roster right now for another kicker that we could potentially pick up if they plan on releasing them or whatever. We gotta be. There's no way we're not, man. It's a really ugly situation. We arguably have the worst kicker situation in the NFL. It's not looking good. Both of them are trash. You gotta remember, like, Riley Patterson is losing the kicker competition to Ramiz Ahmed, I believe, up to this point. And I really want to emphasize that Ramiz Ahmed was Chris Blewett's backup at the XFL. Riley Patterson is looking worse than Chris Blewett's backup. So that already should tell you that, like, our kicker situation is bad. But then when you actually go to these practices, you hear about these practices, you read articles on these practices, and you're hearing about these guys missing kicks consistently. It's not looking good. We need new kickers right now. This is probably the most urgent part of the team. Offensive line has a higher positional value, so I can see why people would panic more so over that. But again, at least there's like a light at the end of the tunnel. When they're healthy, we're good. These kickers can be fully healthy. These kickers could be off the Space Jam halftime water and they'll still be trash. There's no light at the end of the tunnel for the kicker situation as of right now, at least with the guys that we currently have on roster. So that is my biggest concern right now. And their stock was already really low going into the joints practice. It only lowered dramatically after that Jets practice. I mean, this is the lowest stock coming into the practice, and this is also the lowest stock I have leaving that joint practice against the Jets as well. Now, before we get into the stock ups, peep what my boy Michael Vick got to say to you real quick, and then I'm gonna talk to you right afterwards.
Michael Vick at BetUS.com. Catch an incredible 125% sign-up bonus on your first 3 deposits, plus 10% gambler's insurance. BetUS, my online sportsbook and casino.
Man, you heard the man. I mean, are you looking for a new book this football season? Well, it should be BetUS for sure. Stop playing. I'm telling you. First of all, they have the fastest payouts in the industry. I know y'all want y'all money fast. I do too. And when you sign up, especially through me, you can get a 125% sign up bonus on your first 3 deposits up to $2,000 or even 200% crypto deposit bonus with your first deposit as well. Make sure you check out my BetUS link in the description below. Your boy Street Score is going to hook you up every time. It's the pinned comment. It's in the description, all of that type of stuff. Go hit that link. And they have an easy and fast deposit and withdrawal process. I mean, you don't even have to worry about that part like maybe some of them other people out there. And they have 24/7 personalized service, 365 days a year. They're always there for you, even when you're off. I know a lot of y'all take days off. They don't. Like they're not playing with y'all, and they have live wagering on all major games, all of them. Name it, they got it. And to me, they also have the best betting variety in the business. Love that about them. And even if you somehow do miss on your bets, even though they set you up for success, but if you do miss out on some of your bets, you can even get 10% back on your net losses twice a year. That's forgiveness. We love that. I know y'all do. And did you know that BetUS can even give you your very own personal account manager? Come on now, like who else is doing that, man? Who else in the game is doing stuff like that? And just, you know, at the end of the day, y'all my people, they're my people. I just feel like y'all should rock with each other. So off top, go on and hit that website for show through my link. Again, link in the description, and it's the pinned comment in this video. Now let's get back to this video. What about these stock ups? Because everything wasn't all bad now. Like, some people may act like it was, but it really wasn't that bad for real. It was not just all doom and gloom. The Jets look better than us, yes. And I hope that everybody expected that to happen to go in. I just wanted us to go in and compete and show that, yo, okay, we got something going here against this great defense, against this great offense. I mean, they're easily playoff contenders. With Aaron Rodgers, I believe they're Super Bowl contenders, honestly. The only thing, I mean, we just don't have much to go off of because they weren't really good last year, but I blame injuries for that. But when healthy, and after they picked up Hassan Reddick, even though he is holding out right now, I believe they are Super Bowl contenders. And I felt like we didn't look like a trash team going against Super Bowl contenders. I feel like that's a whole nother level of disparity between two teams. I don't feel like the gap was that wide. I'm not saying that we matched them. They definitely beat us. Like, if that were like a scrimmage, they would have done us dirty. But I don't feel like the gap, like to Super Bowl contender to where we were equals we're trash. I don't think so at all. I think we look like potentially like a 7-win, maybe even an 8-win team out there. I don't think it was that bad. Again, some people are panicking and acting like it's doom and gloom. We were just absolutely terrible out there. There were parts of our team and angles of our team that, yeah, we need to improve on. We just went over those in the stock downs, but there's definitely room for optimism. Let's get into those stock ups. First of all, Frankie Louvu is going to be a top 5 NFL linebacker. That's a stock up on that. I mean, I already assumed that he would be a really good linebacker when we got him in free agency. Even before we got him in free agency, I was looking around like, okay, we need some linebackers. Let's go get that Frankie Louvu guy, because he was in a bad Carolina Panthers defense where he was kind of having to pick up the slack for other guys around him. He wasn't in a really talented defense. He was having to make up for a lot of the bad that other people were doing. Now here, especially next to Bobby Wagner, he's going to be able to focus on exactly what he needs to do, which is going to allow him to play freer and just more instinctual and basically better. He's going to be in a better environment that's going to bring out the best in him. So I was already high on Frankie Louvu. But then you had, I forgot the writer, it may have been Mike Clay or one of those guys, Doug Farrar. Somebody said that he's going to be the second best linebacker in the NFL this year, only behind Fred Warner. And then another national analyst, writer type of guy, sports analyst guy, said that the Commanders will have the best linebacker group in the NFL. Well, I feel like after that Jets joint practice, even though I agreed going in, I'm a little bit more confident in that actually being a real thing, leaving that Jets joints practice, mainly because Frankie Louvu was a menace against the Jets, getting pressure on the quarterback, stopping the run. Him and Jordan McGee like combined for like a really big hit on a running back. He was everywhere. And again, when they were trying to block us, Frankie Louvu was one of the more consistent guys at getting pressure on the quarterback. So he's continuing that whole, I mean, one thing about Frankie Louvu, the one thing you can say that he's arguably the best stat in the NFL out of all off-ball linebackers, out of all inside linebackers, is getting to the quarterback, especially up the middle, up the A-gap, off the edge and things like that. And he showed that against the Jets. So Frankie Louvu, this linebacker group in general, it's gonna be nasty. It's gonna be something serious. Him being a top 5 linebacker is not far-fetched at all. You may want to go ahead and buy that stock before people start to really see it and realize it across, like, everywhere. Because right now it's more of so like a Commanders thing, or maybe some national analysts are saying it and there's whispers about it. But wait till we get on that field on Sundays and he's up there for a Pro Bowl, even maybe potentially All-Pro. He's one of the highest graded linebackers on Pro Football Focus. Now everybody knows. So go ahead and jump on that stock early. Next up, Zach Ertz as Jaden Daniels' favorite target. That stock is definitely up because it was a rough day for Jaden Daniels overall. And you started to see, okay, when things are rough, when things are going bad, who is the guy that I'm looking for? When in doubt, safety blanket, I can depend on everything else. Nothing else is working. I know this one thing is going to work. That's Zach Ertz to Jaden Daniels right now. Because he was already kind of doing that already, even in the Commanders training camp practices amongst ourselves, to where, like, you could argue that Zach Ertz was his already favorite target on the team. But like when Jaden Daniels is under duress and everything is chaotic and his head is spinning and he has no time from the offensive line, who is the guy that, like, it's just instinct, like without really thinking, like just a pure natural reaction, not something at the front of your brain, just instincts. Oh no, panic this, like just my go-to, I'm not even conscious about it thing, and that's Zach Ertz for him right now. I mean, first of all, they were uncoverable in 7-on-7s, and that's another reason why I feel like the Jaden Daniels situation is being overblown a little bit, because when there was no offensive line versus defensive line involved, when it was 7-on-7s instead of 11-on-11s, Jaden Daniels was killing the Jets, like killing. Touchdown, completions, all types of stuff. But then even beyond that, in the 7-on-7 specifically, Jaden Daniels and Zach Ertz seemed uncoverable. And then there was that one play on 4th and 10 they got called back because Chris Paul, for some reason, was the first string right tackle because our injuries got that severe. He jumped offside. So they technically had a false start situation. So they called the play back, but it was 4th and 10. And Zach Ertz was triple covered, and Jaden Daniels still found a way to get the ball to him only where he can get it, and he somehow still came down with it, and it would have been a first down on 4th and 10 if Chris Paul didn't false start. But I mean, that just goes to show, worst case scenario, 4th and 10, we need it. Jaden Daniels thinks of Zach Ertz even while triple covered. If he's triple covered, that means somebody else must be more open. So I'm even looking at Jaden Daniels a little sideways, like, why are you throwing it to Zach Ertz when he's triple covered? Oh, that's why, because he still caught it. So that is his ultimate safety blanket. That's his favorite target. As of right now, I would probably assume and predict that Terry McLaurin may have the most yards out of the team, receiving yards, but I think Zach Ertz could easily end up with the most targets and catches. I mean, Jaden Daniels loves throwing the ball to that guy. Speaking of Jaden Daniels, we got to give a stock up on his ability to protect the ball, man. Because, again, he never threw an interception, and he didn't have a lot of bad throws. He was just under duress a lot of the time. He may have been inaccurate at times, but his decision-making was not bad. I mean, first of all, imagine if he was allowed to use his legs. I believe in practice. I can't confirm, but I believe in that joint practice, like most of the Commanders' practices, except for, like, the last couple. They're really trying to emphasize, do not rely on your legs. Just be a pure pocket passing quarterback, develop that, and then let your legs be like the extra sauce on top that you can utilize in regular season games. But while we're practicing, we want you working on your processing skills, your accuracy from the pocket and things like that. So I don't even think he was allowed to use his legs. I think in that joint practices against the Jets, if he were to, he would have had moments where they wouldn't have even been in that 4th and 10 situation in the first place. Like things like little things like that could have made a huge difference. I believe they didn't allow him to do that. And so even with all of that pressure, even in the rain, and even though he wasn't allowed to run, from what I believe, no turnovers and no like frantic throws that I'm hearing about where it's like, Jaden Daniels, why did you even throw that? Like, what made you do that? Again, some throws were inaccurate. I believe there was one throw that I can recall that like sailed over Terry McLaurin's head. He just completely missed them. But for the most part, especially in those 7-on-7s, again, when there was no offensive line that you had to rely on to protect you, he was killing that Jets secondary. So At the very least, I mean, there's some things where it's like, okay, maybe we need to slow down the Jaden Daniels hype a little bit, like I mentioned in the stock down. But stock up for sure is his ability to protect the ball. He's a big-time playmaker. Usually these guys with an amazing deep ball that are looking for big plays down the field, especially these running quarterbacks as well, these guys tend to be like they're either going to make a big play for the offense or they're going to give away a big play for the defense. They're going to either score a touchdown or score turnovers. Jaden Daniels seems like the perfect blend of risk adverse and big playability. Like, and that's best case scenario for him at the NFL level, especially going into the regular season. Now, granted, he hasn't played even in a preseason game, so we can't definitively say that he is that type of quarterback, but that Jets practice showed me a lot about the fact that he was under that much pressure. He was struggling. He was not having a good day, but at the very least, he protected the ball, and that's a big time, man. I don't believe he's thrown an interception all training camp. If he has, it may have been one. That's it. All training camp so far. That is literally it. And I'm not even sure if that... I know Marcus Mariota has thrown a couple, but I'm not sure. I don't think Jaden Daniels has thrown an interception so far in training camp. He did a voluntary OTAs. I believe may have done so in mandatory minicamps, but since training camp, I don't think he's thrown an interception. This is a guy that knows how to like make sure he keeps the ball in the offense's hands. He doesn't fumble. He doesn't, I believe he had like a fumbled exchange with a running back, maybe or something like that at some point, I think I heard, but he doesn't just fumble on his own. Like, with pressure on him, guys aren't able just to basically strip sack him, strip the ball out of his hands. He protects the ball that way, and he doesn't throw interception. He doesn't put the ball in harm's way, and that is one of the biggest compliments for a quarterback. That is one of the biggest reasons I'm optimistic about him, because again, playmakers like Jaden Daniels with the traits that he has, with his big arm ability, deep throw ability, and using his legs, tend to be pretty risky when throwing the ball. They're always looking for the big play. Jaden Daniels has the big play in him, but he's very risk averse and smart, and I love that about him. I feel like that's a big time stock up that we should be very excited about, that I feel like a lot of people who, again, are doom and gloom about that Jets joint practice didn't necessarily see the light that way. Now, moving on, speaking of rain, like I just mentioned, because again, to not turn the ball over in the rain is already one thing. I mean, that's amazing in itself. But speaking of rain, I would say that the team handled the rain better than I thought they would. Even London Fletcher, who was there at the practice, like, confirmed this and said, like, I mean, yeah, there were some drop balls by receivers early on, but they ended up getting it under wraps for the most part throughout the day. And overall, there were nowhere near as many drop passes or bobble snaps as you'd expect from a rainy practice, especially the team's, I believe, first rainy practice of training camp, and against a great defense like the Jets. So if there were any time to be a little nervous, anything, it's going against an elite defense while it's raining in their territory. They have the crowd on their side, all of that, and I felt like they handled the rain pretty well. I didn't hear anything about Jaden Daniels having any bobble snaps with Tyler Biadasz. I may have heard about him slipping up, handing the ball off once, I think, I don't remember, but overall, man, I believe the team did a pretty good job in the rain. Again, London Fletcher was there. He spoke on the podcast that him and Bran Weinstein, I believe they're coming out with a new podcast, and they talked about it and was like, man, he was really impressed with how they handled the rain. I mean, of course, you're going to have a couple of mistakes because it's raining. Everybody does. Even Super Bowl contenders do. But he felt like they did a good job of being, like, concentrating and make sure they handled that rain really well. The kickers were awful in the rain. We're going to ignore them because we already talked about that in the stock down. But receivers, quarterback, everybody else, center, handing the ball off, running backs, running with the ball. I don't believe we had any issues there. So that's very encouraging because we are more than likely going to play some games in the rain. I mean, our home stadium that we're going to play in half the season does not have a dome over it, and a lot of our opponents do not have domes or rooftops over their stadiums as well, so it's quite likely we're going to end up with some rain games, at least one, and I'm hoping that game isn't an automatic loss just simply because of the rain and we're not prepared for it. As of right now, it looks like we may be prepared for it. And then my last stock up, even though this is not like a big time stock up, it's still very encouraging because the pass rush, it may be a slight stock up. I'm not saying a monumental jump up, but definitely you may want to go ahead and buy that stock now, and you'll probably get a pretty decent return on it when we actually get to the regular season, because it may be a little bit better than we thought. Now, granted, our pass rush became dominant once their starting tackles and Tyron Smith, we're familiar with from the Cowboys, and our boy Morgan Moses, he was their starting right tackle as well. Once they sat out of practice, our pass rush was pretty much unstoppable at that point. And so it does make you kind of a little apprehensive to give them too many compliments, because it's like, okay, when the starting tackles were out there, where were y'all at? What were y'all doing? And some people are kind of saying that it was a mix of the starting tackles sitting out, and also the defense just took time to kind of ramp up. And once they got things going, that pass rush was actually pretty deadly. Again, the only reason I'm not going to just say buy all of the stock in this, put all of your money into this stock yet, is because they didn't really tee up until the starting tackles of the Jets sat out. That's when they started to be dominant. We'll see how that goes. So, but it sounds like we're really deep at the position as well, because I'm hearing a lot of glowing remarks of Javonte Jean-Baptiste, this team's 7th round pick. He's probably the most forgotten member of the draft class because of the fact that he was a 7th round pick. But Adam Peters, Dan Quinn, and those guys wanted him for a reason. I'm hearing about how his length is helping him out a lot. He's flashed a lot so far in training camp. He flashed against the Jets as well. Javonte Jean-Baptiste, we may be deeper at the position than we thought. I mean, I was never really worried about depth when it came to our edge rusher group. I'm more so worried about the upside. Like, who's the star in the group? Dorrance Armstrong has some potential, because even though he's been a backup for the Cowboys the last couple of years, if you project his snaps and his stats over the course of like a starting level amount of snaps, he's a double-digit sack guy. And we haven't had that here in a pretty long time. So he could be that guy, but it's still kind of like I got to see it to believe it. But the other guys, I mean, we have dependable veterans that, like, we know at the very least they won't be trash. My problem with this group is who's going to stand out and be the Micah Parsons, the Brian Burns, the Hassan Reddick of the group. That's what I'm hoping we get out of this group. The star edge rusher that teams have to game plan against. I'm not sure if we exactly have that, but we do have a lot of average to above average, maybe even good edge rushers. I just want to make sure we have a dominant one. That's the only thing I'm not sure about. But depth wise, we're deep. I like KJ Henry's potential. Again, Javonte Jean-Baptiste is getting glowing remarks. Then your starters are Dorrance Armstrong and Cleveland Farrell, and Dante Fowler is a pretty good situational pass rusher. When you need 3rd and long, obvious passing downs, you need somebody to get after the quarterback, he can do that for you. So the pass rush is at least going to be moderately good, and they run deep. So even if there's an injury or if somebody's tired, they need to rotate somebody else in there. It's not like we're just going to have a huge fall off like some teams. Like some teams may have a dominant pass rusher at the top, but when that guy's tired or if that guy gets hurt, their pass rush is non-existent. The advantage to this, the way that we have this set up, we may not have that dominant definitive Pro Bowler that teams have to game plan against, but it's a constant barrage of good pass rush all throughout the game that may be really annoying to deal with. You never catch a break. Some teams may have that dominant pass rusher, but when he's out for whatever reason, tired or hurt, the pass rush is non-existent. They have nothing going for them. Their DBs are in an ugly situation. Whereas ours, and first of all, even just schematically, Dan Quinn and Joe Wood Jr. do an excellent job of scheming up pressure and manufacturing it on their own just by X's and O's wise and putting guys in situations to win. Blitzing, you have Frankie Louvu as an inside linebacker that's also going to contribute to that. He did a great job against the Jets, even against the starters as well. So, hey man, we're going to have a relentless, non-stop, all 4 quarters throughout the entire game pass rush. It may never be as great as a Micah Parsons, but it may also never be as bad as a lot of teams out there that once their star pass rusher is out, they got nothing going for them. And I can live with that for now, with the hope that Dorrance Armstrong, KJ Henry, and Javonte Jean-Baptiste unlock something in them to where maybe one of those guys are the dominant pass rusher that we hope we have. But yeah, man, that's the end of this video. Please get in the comment section. Let me know how you feel about everything discussed in this video. Please stiff arm that like button, stiff arm the subscription button, stiff arm the bell next to that subscription button so you get notification each and every time I release an informative and opinionated video just like this one. Make sure you let me know in that comment section how you feel about everything. Let me know if you agree or disagree with any of my points. If you had to do your own 5 stock ups and 5 stock downs, what would yours be? And again, let me know if you directly agree or disagree with any of the points that I made in this video. Do not leave this video without leaving a like. I really appreciate y'all. Again, make sure you pull up because I will be live streaming that Commanders Jets preseason game tomorrow. The game starts at 12. I'll be live streaming throughout the entire game, but I'm starting the live stream an hour early at 11 a.m. So make sure you pull up and stay all the way from 11 to like 4 by the time the game ends, man, because you know me, we're even going to break down and analyze even the backups once those guys come in. So stay tuned for all of that. And also remember that this video was sponsored by BetUS Sportsbook and Casino, and please make sure you gamble responsibly, man. Please do that if anything that you do. I really appreciate y'all. I'm gonna catch y'all later. I'm out.